Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alistair.
And in today's episode, we will not be reviewing the new Jordan Peele horror movie Us, as threatened at the end of the previous episode, because due to a variety of scheduling fuck-ups, we can't actually see the film and get the episode out on time. But we are instead going to cover the recent Netflix sci-fi, well, in the end, kind of sci-fi fantasy general genre anthology, Love, Death and Robots. And since these is like 18 episodes of, in general, like 10, 12, 15 minutes each, rather than reviewing all 18 in torturous detail, we're going to do a top 5 countdown. It'll remind you of those classic end-of-year episodes. And then, once we've covered Love, Death and Robots, we will be asking, does Netflix know too much about you? But before all of that, Alistair, what else have you consumed in the last fortnight?
Well, I've been watching a different show on Netflix, as well as Love, Death and Robots. I've been watching the German Netflix show Dark.
Oh yeah, that's been on my vague to watch list for years, actually.
Yeah, I wanted to watch it for a while. It's been highly acclaimed and recommended. People compared it to Primer, which is one of my favourite films, which is a sort of independent science fiction film. I think it's been compared to Primer because Dark is about time travel and is also got quite a complicated plot involving like the complex causality of time travel. But yeah, it's a good show. It's kind of got a sort of mystery at its core. It's set in this small town in Germany where a teenager has disappeared. The sort of police are investigating the disappearance of this teenager, and it seems to be a repeat of something that happened back in 1986 when a teenager disappeared. And then there's some strange going on, and so far one person has been transported back to 1986. Though you're not really sure why or how. So the mystery sort of unfolding slowly, and there's a lot of like character drama and like, you know, things about the relationships between the kind of the characters, both in the past and the present, as well as this kind of mystery of like, why are people being abducted and why is there time travel?
And I'm guessing the 80s angle isn't being played up for like Stranger Things-esque nostalgia.
There's kind of maybe a bit of like nostalgia, but not quite as much as like Stranger Things. You know, it's not quite that kind of tone, but there is like there's a bit of 80s nostalgia. I've only seen the first 3 episodes. I think episode 3 is one that's set almost like entirely in 1986 after the first time travel event. So there are various things like, I don't know, like 80s music being played in the background and things. Yeah, but it's much creepier, I think, and darker than Stranger Things, which was quite dark, but I don't know. This show's got some sort of weird edge to it, which I quite enjoy.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, to what extent is it a kind of horror thing? Because obviously, I assumed it was quite dark.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a sort of horror element going on in that. Yeah, the time travel element involves this kind of mysterious cave, which is like it's quite scary. And there's obviously someone abducting teenagers.
Yeah, and it's played as creepy rather than just, genre-y.
Yeah, it's definitely played for the creepy vibes.
Okay, yeah, I'll probably watch it at some stage. It's partly just the sheer length of my to-watch list, and partly, as I think we've discussed before, you always seem to often end up bumping subtitled stuff down the list because it involves more concentration.
Yeah, that can be a factor. It's just required a little bit more brain work, I find, to watch something subtitled. Although, I am enjoying subtitled television more recently because it means I put my phone away. I do find it hard to resist the urge to fiddle with my phone while watching TV, but subtitles means you can't because you'll miss something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I try and put my phone away for whole TV episodes, but I often don't manage it, especially if it's something like, I know, some of the more on-the-nose superhero stuff I know, where they do clearly narrate everything that's happening so that people who are half looking at their phone can still follow it. Yeah. And I fall straight into their trap and start sort of half looking at my phone.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I do prefer subtitled TV, is that it does give you a phone break.
Yeah, I had a big subtitled phase about the time everyone did, when like The Killing and Borgen were on, but since then I've not really watched any.
So yeah, I'm enjoying this, and I've been enjoying The Returned as well, for the French zombie show, which is quite good as well.
Again, it's on the one-day list.
Yeah, it's all on Netflix. Anyway, so that's what I've been watching. Nick, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
I too have been on Netflix. Yeah, as we've said before in recent episodes, recently it seems like we never do anything else. But yeah, I too have been on Netflix watching the 4th season of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a show I think we covered in the recommendation section of this very podcast about 3 years ago in the early days when it was just first coming up on Netflix and they put the first season up. But yeah, we're now on season 4, and this is the 4th and final season. The show is having its ending.
Oh, cool. I remember this was your favourite TV show 2017 when we counted them down.
Yes, it was my favourite show of 2017. It's took a slight drop in 2018, and we'll see how it stands in 2019. The fourth season so far, it's a very victory lappy fourth season. I think there's a lot of like bringing back old characters and tying off loose ends, and I don't know, the good episodes of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and this might just be my desire to see human suffering, but who knows, are the ones where they do actually delve into some quite difficult, harrowing mental health stuff. And although there are still some good moments in season 4, it feels like they're mostly just focusing on, how things are on the up now, and she's slowly tying off everything that was bothering her. And although it's very nice to see the character happy, it's not, I don't know. At its best, it felt like it was kind of a comedy drama, and at the moment it feels like it's more of a sort of pleasant comedy about a woman who used to have mental health problems, apologising to all the people she's wronged, or slowly getting her life in order. I'm sort of hoping that at some point in the remaining, like, just over half of the season I've got left, there's I've seen about 8 episodes, so about half season actually, they will, at least one more truly awful thing will happen, that's all I ask. Or at least one more thing that threatens to be awful and maybe, takes a few episodes to be overcome.
So you would recommend sticking with it for all 4 series?
In the Cosmic Balance, it's possible I might end up saying, should they have ended at the end of season 3 rather than taken this slightly quiet victory lap? But yeah, definitely up to the end of season 3, there's a very strong sort of 1, 2, 3 arc of her rising, falling, and then slowly but surely getting some traction. And she has her sort of rock bottom moments around halfway through season 3, and after that there's some quite affecting stuff. But I'm interested to see how they end it, and whether it is just going to be a very long, quiet ending, or whether there is one more big thing coming. But yeah, it's been a good show as a whole, and any show that has a couple of well-produced comedy songs per episode has pretty much got me, I think.
Oh yeah, so they stick with the songs throughout.
Oh yeah, that's the one constant, yeah. There's always at least 2 comedy song bits.
That requires an impressive level of creativity, I think, to write that many funny songs.
I mean, they're very pastiche-y. Like, I think there's always a very sense that this time they're doing a boy band song, or a Beach Boys song, or a Euro disco song.
Yeah.
But they're usually pretty good. And it is interesting that they've kept basically the same cast of characters, with maybe a couple of people coming and going over the course of the whole 4 years, and a lot of them have changed and developed in quite interesting ways. Like, you saw the first couple of episodes, didn't you?
Yeah, we watched the first 3 or 4 for the podcast.
Yeah, and the boy she has a crush on,
yeah,
Josh.
Yeah,
he's still in it. He's actually, he's ended up going on a bit of a sort of journey of self-discovery himself. In fact, weirdly, because he's kind of making more sort of personal discoveries, it almost feels like he has a bigger dramatic arc in season 4 than the lead character does, which is slightly weird. But yeah, it's interesting how the whole cast has sort of changed and moved around the lead character as well.
That sounds good. They haven't just fallen into a kind of holding pattern that I think a lot of sitcoms can. This sort of format or this premise is funny, so we'll just stick with it. Whereas they've actually kind of progressed the characters, which I guess is good, but it means that there must inevitably be an end, I suppose.
I mean, I don't think it's ever been particularly well or massive in the ratings, but yeah, it's good for them actually having an ending and going for it, I think. I think it's, even if it's going to be quite a quiet ending, I think it's going to feel like quite a coherent show when it's finished.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad it's continuing to be good.
Yeah, if you like comedy music or inspiring, harrowingly real, but still kind of ultimately uplifting messages about mental health, then Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is still a very good show.
First up, this episode, we'll be reviewing Love, Death and Robots, a new anthology science fiction show from David Fincher, Joshua Doan, Jennifer Miller and Tim Miller on Netflix. The show consists of 18 short episodes, each of which was animated by a different team in a different style in a variety of countries, all broadly based around the themes of love, death and robots. We've seen all 18 episodes of the show, and we're going to count down our top 5 favourite episodes. But before that, Nick, what did you think of the show overall?
All in all, it was a mostly okay collection. There was probably a few too many ones that I thought were slightly generic or slightly honestly bad for me to go, yeah, this was fucking great. There's certainly enough there, but if you wanted to go in and pick and choose the best ones, you could probably have an okay time. But I could, watching all 18, there is a certain air of genericness, and to be honest, a certain slightly annoying sense of, these cartoons ain't for kids. Like, a bit too much swearing, definitely too many random scenes of women getting their tops off, and possibly slightly too many scenes of women being pointlessly beaten to death as well. But definitely, as someone who doesn't watch much animation, it was very interesting to see all these different animation styles and all the things they can do now. And there was some stuff which was honestly the sort of thing I'd never really seen before in animated form. Again, that may well be my own sheltered life rather than, anything that the animation has done wrong, but it was a very cool sort of way of dipping my toe in the pool. I did enjoy it from that perspective. And, even if some of the writing was a bit swearing tits or slightly generic sci-fi, the animation was all of an incredibly high quality. Shout out there.
Yeah, the animation was phenomenal. I think. Clearly the star of the whole piece was like the really cool animation. Like either some of the CGI that's pretty much photorealistic to the point where I think like, have they like used live action actors and added them in digitally? Like, no, this is just really high quality animation.
There was a couple of times where they were doing sort of shiny, realistic people animation, and if I'm being honest, it did hit the uncanny valley point we've discussed a bit before, where I was a bit, is this good? Or does this look sort of not real enough to be realistic, but also not fake enough to be cool? But yeah, it was mostly quite good. There was an episode where they CGI'd the actress Samira Wiley, who's been in Orange is the New Black and Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
I think into the episode where she was voicing the character, which was actually quite impressive.
Yeah, she did really look like her real life equivalent of herself in this CGI world. That was one of the moments like the animation is like, wow, that is really close to being photorealistic. I think my main takeaway from the whole thing is like, well, like any anthology show, it is inevitably hit and miss. Like not every single concept is good. I mean, it's the same with like Black Mirror or Inside Number 9. Like I always find that like the obvious opinion with these shows is, well, it's a bit hit and miss because anthology shows by their nature will be hit and miss unless each episode is going to be very similar and like press like the same button. So you watch Orange is the New Black. I'm just saying that because you just mentioned it. Like obviously you get the same tone and the same characters for every episode, so you kind of always know what you're signing up for. Anthology shows kind of do the opposite, which is that it varies wildly, like in terms of tone and plot and things like that. Like some of these like were really quite funny and some of them are really quite dark. I think inevitably there will be like there's like a hit and miss element to it. But I did find it quite interesting. I very much like the sort of short form content that was nice, like lots of nice little short episodes. I like the fact that they kind of stuck to what's sort of like the basic idea behind short stories, which is the like set up, break the mold, develop, then usually a twist and something like that. And I generally preferred, I think, the ones that had like were more plotty and had like a twist or something like that than the ones that were more just like, here's some cool animation or here's a kind of a funny situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what we've both put in our respective top fives, because I thought it's possible they might actually be quite different, but I guess we'll find out in a minute. But yeah, I did find it quite interesting in a sort of what do you do with a short story perspective. I still think the adult contentometer seemed a bit skewed. Like there was some which were like basically kids' cartoons, except the characters kept saying fuck, and I don't really know why. And like the level of swearing seemed a bit, and I say this as someone who probably swears more than is actually necessary. It's, I don't know, every single different shit just clanged into the bowl.
Yeah, it was very much a kind of cartoons are not for kids, but in the sense of like more that like cartoons are aimed at sort of moody teenagers. In that it was quite violent. There's quite a lot of swearing and sex, but there isn't a lot of a kind of embracing like adult issues or themes. I guess, I mean, they're all like short, so they don't have a huge amount of time to develop things like that, but it's definitely like what teenagers think being a grown-up is like, which is like swearing and sex.
There was an episode, the one about when the yogurt took over, I think it's called, which is done in sort of cute felt animation, and at one point a tiny felt woman gets her boobs out and they just sort of bit, okay, this might have just tipped over into ludicrous, but cool, continue.
Yeah.
Anyway, and also some of them did feel a bit like video game cutscenes, to be honest. It's sort of a combination of the uncanny animation and the slightly generic dialogue.
Yeah. Some of the episodes, they were very much like, let's just show off some cool animation. There isn't really much story here. There's just some nice animation. Some of them really had like great like self-contained story with like a twist and things like that. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what we put as our favourites.
Is this a good segue to go into our lists?
Yeah, sounds good.
Right, okay. My fifth favourite of all 18 episodes was Suits. One of the longer ones, I think, an episode set on a farm in which a bunch of farmers don mech suits to fend off weird sort of xenomorphy alien creatures that are threatening to overwhelm their farms.
Yeah.
This is one of those ones where it's possible I may just like it because the animation was very slick and very comic-y. A lot of the ones I've gone for, to be honest, are the ones that have some kind of quirky angle or cool twist. But this one, to be honest, I did just like because it felt like a very straightforward, pure story where there was some fighting, some sort of delicate quipping. No one took their top off. There wasn't too much pointless swearing, and there was a nice dramatic arc through, fighting, hopelessness, a bit of sacrifice. It did feel like I think it wanted to feel, like a little mini sci-fi adventure in about 15 minutes, and I quite liked that.
So my approach to the whole thing is I actually ranked all of them in order, and then to decide what my favourite one is. And I put Suits actually 16 out of 18, so quite near the bottom.
Oh wow, are we headed for fights? Excellent.
I mean, it's not like I didn't hate it, but my dislike of it is that I felt it was quite straightforward. It was just like, there's some baddies and we're going to shoot them.
Yeah.
You're right, the animation was cool. I did like the design of the kind of big sort of war mechs that they have. They were cool and sort of, I don't know, yeah, exactly what you'd get if a tractor fucked a transformer.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, because it's set on what's supposed to be, I guess, like a sort of prairie farm in America, but obviously on some kind of alien planet. But yeah, so it's all very much like, again, I don't know, it's very Hank Hill fights the Tyranids or something like that. I don't know. I did like the general aesthetic of like the farm and like kind of bringing that into the war machines.
The animation here did help sell it to me quite a lot, I think.
Yeah, there was good animation.
Cool. What was your number 5?
My number 5 was, we've already discussed it, it was Lucky 13.
Ah, okay.
The one where Samira Wiley is a pilot of like a warplane sort of transport thing. The number 13 in it's bad luck, but for her, it seems to be good luck. And she runs a lot of missions until inevitably there's one that gets out of hand. And you do generally, just before I guess we go any further, there probably will be spoilers because most of these have a twist. And it's going to be hard to talk about them without the twist. You do kind of really feel for the poor Lucky 13 when it gets blown up, which I liked. There's a good bit when she sets it to self-destruct and runs away after it's been shot down, and then it doesn't explode, and you think, oh no, the ship wants to live, but actually it's waiting until the enemy soldiers get close enough to it to self-destruct and take as many with it as possible, which is quite good. And they never really reveal is the ship alive or is it just pilot superstition. So I like that.
That was on my sort of honourable mention, nearly made it list. I did enjoy that one. That was probably, to be honest, fighting with suits for the sort of slightly generic sci-fi, but I quite like it position.
Even though it's quite generic sci-fi, I generally was like, no, you can't die, Lucky 13, which is odd. It's impressive they managed to make you feel for an inanimate war machine.
Yeah, no, that was good. And as you say, the animation with Samira Wiley was one of the ones where, despite doing the sort of shiny real people thing, it didn't seem too uncanny. So, kudos.
Yeah. As a colleague of mine I was talking to about pointed this out, that actually the animation usually looks better with people of colour because there isn't that kind of weird plastic shininess they seem to get with white people when they do photoreal animation.
Not something I'd noticed, but yeah.
So, Nick, what is your 4th favourite?
Weirdly, this spot was more heavily contested than number 5, which might say something weird, but yeah, I went for 3 robots, in which 3 different robots wander around the ruins of a civilization and slowly unveil what happened to it. It's fairly straightforward, sort of fun banter story, but I quite liked the vibe between the characters. I quite enjoyed that, unlike a lot of these stories, to be honest, the characters actually did have firm distinctions between them and you actually got some level of relation to them before it ended, which I quite like. And there was lots of fun visual bits and nice little moments. Yeah, it felt like a story that, again, had a beginning, middle and end, and it had a unique aesthetic and the animation was cool, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, weirdly, this is also my number 4.
And yet, none of us aptly put it at number 3.
Yeah, I was number 3 for a while, but then I think it got bumped down when I watched some more episodes. But yeah, I agree with what you said. I thought it was well written. This was funny. And yeah, like I say, it had just 3 good characters, a good premise. They referenced the card game Exploding Kittens, which is nice to get for it to get a shout out.
Yeah, weirdly, they also played that in an episode of Supergirl. Evidently, this is very much the year that Exploding Kittens becomes the mainstream face of gaming.
But no, I like this one. I thought it was funny and, like you say, yeah, well animated, and they did a good job of creating 3 distinct characters in a quite short period of time.
Yeah, this is based on a short story by John Scalzi, I think.
Quite a few of them were, yeah.
But yeah, they're all based on short stories of some kind, aren't they?
Yeah.
But there are 3 of them by John Scalzi, and I think this is the only Scalzi one in my top 5. But yeah, this is charming in the way a lot of the Scalzi stuff I've read is. So yeah, I liked this.
Yeah.
Is it back to me then?
Yes. Nick, your 3rd favourite.
My 3rd favourite was Ice Age. The only one, I think the only one of the only ones to incorporate live action elements alongside the animation, and it's possibly a bit of a gimmick story, but I just liked the sort of the charmingness of it and the sort of quirky, unexplained surrealism of it, in which two people played by actors, find a whole civilization living in their freezer, which goes through this sort of whole cycle of civilization from beginning to end and then starts again. It perhaps doesn't actually have a plot per se, but I was just weirdly transfixed by it, and I thought it had a unique flavour that a lot of the others didn't have. So yeah, number 3, Ice Age.
I really liked Ice Age as well. I put that number 7, so it was vying to be in the top 5, and for quite a long time it was at the number 5 position. I liked it just because, yeah, it was charming, it was quirky, it was just a nice little story. I thought that the animation on the little city in the fridge was cool. Yeah, it was just a really nice, charming little story, so I liked Ice Age.
Cool, okay. What was your number 3?
My number 3 was Sonny's Edge, which is the one about sort of underground pit fighting where people kind of upload their consciousness into monsters with sort of cybernetic implants for maximum brutality. It follows the only woman who competes in this quite violent blood sport, who has, an edge on the other competitors, which means she always wins. And at the end of the episode, that edge is revealed.
I did like the twist on this, and I liked the sort of the fight sequence. I thought there was a lot of clever idea stuff going on. This was the first one where I started to feel a bit weary of the edginess of the whole thing, as in a fairly short sequence we had the usual load of swearing, plus mention of gang rape, plus slightly pointless toplessness, and then a woman being pulverised into pieces, which did make me go a bit, okay. But yeah, it did have a fun twist at the end.
Yeah, it was, like I say, kind of edgy teenage violence and sex, but I thought the pit fight was really well done. Like, yeah, it was brutal. It was, they managed to capture the violence quite well, again, in a completely believable way. The animation was great. It had a good dark moodiness to it. It had a twist at the end. Yeah, I liked the ones with a twist at the end. And yeah, and there was a kind of kick-ass heroine character. I thought it was a good bit of like sci-fi horror.
Not that many of them actually had a twist at the end, surprisingly. Or the few that did, it didn't. There weren't many where the twist actually surprised me or felt like a really good, well-earned twist. And this was one of the ones that did actually pull off its twist. I'll give it that.
Cool. So, my number 3, Sonny's Edge. Nick, what did you have at number 2?
Number 2 for me was a more straight-up sci-fi one. This was Helping Hand, about a woman out on a spacewalk who becomes detached from her satellite and sort of drifting away in space, has to try and take drastic action to help survive. And yeah, it was a fairly simple, and to be honest, I think one of the things I kind of liked about it is that, it didn't try and establish a whole world in a slightly half-assed way in the tiny amount of space it had. It just took this one woman in this one situation in about 2 locations, going through this one very specific, quite scary struggle, and it was very, I don't know, it felt very in the moment. I was very much invested in her desperate struggle for life for the few minutes it went on. And there weren't many of these that actually really hooked me in emotionally, so that has yoinked it up the charts quite effectively.
Yeah, I had this at number 6, so it really narrowly missed out on being in the top 5. Yeah, it's a great story. It was really visceral. There were some moments when I was really like, that is nasty. Like, you're really getting under my skin. And I do like that. Yeah, something really like has an emotional impact, especially if it's a kind of, that's unpleasant. So, and yeah, it's a great little short story in that, there's a quite simple premise, but it's really engaging. Kind of reminds me of Gravity a bit. And it's about realistic physics in space.
Yeah, I did wonder, considering they built the entire story around it, I assumed the central mechanic they had of throwing stuff away to make yourself go backwards is a realistic depiction of what you could do in zero gravity.
Yeah.
It was something I hadn't realised before, but fair enough.
So yeah, it was a good, harder sci-fi story. Certainly very near future and our current level of technology.
Yeah, the tension, and as you say, a couple of really quite hard sort of bits. One of the ones that really did the best job of actually getting a reaction out of me, which I appreciate. So yeah, number 2 for me.
Yeah, that's why I put it quite high. My number 2 was Zima Blue, which was, I really liked it. It had a really cool animation style. This one kind of was one that reminded me the most of like sort of Ian Banks-esque science fiction, in that it's clearly like far future and about these kind of, it's about this artist who's created these like giant blue works of art that are like enormous in scale, but also purely artistic. The colossal art strikes me as something that would exist in like an Ian Banks universe, and it's got a sort of quite profound bit at the end when it's about the artist completing his final work of art, which involves a sort of quite high degree of sacrifice from the artist. And it's all done quite cleverly, I think, it's written from the point of view of a journalist that's sort of profiling this artist who's become more machine over time and to create these like great works of art. And it has a good twist at the end. Yeah, it's quite emotionally affecting, and I really liked it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this. I thought the stylised art was gorgeous. It reminds me of quite a lot of comic artists I quite like, to be honest. I'm trying to think of who they actually are now. It's possibly a bit Darwin Cook, actually, which would mean nothing to you, but hey. And yeah, it had a lot of style. It had a sort of the vague emotional move towards finding bliss in some sort of ethereal other, which I always quite enjoy when you can actually pull it off. And yeah, it was just a gorgeous story. It was quite narrative dominated, which can sometimes feel a bit heavy in these stories, like sort of narration dominated, I guess. Like it was very much someone just telling you stuff, but the visuals, and again, the lovely animation was so overpowering that I didn't really mind. It's based on a story by Alastair Reynolds, who is someone I swear you've mentioned to me at some point.
Yeah, I've read a few of his novels. He's a great science fiction writer.
Yeah, I did think, maybe Alastair will like that one. But yeah, I too also liked it. In fact, spoilers, that was my number 1, so we've done me now.
Right, so that works out well.
Yeah.
So yeah, Zima Blue narrowly missed out on my number 1 spot, and it was difficult to decide, but I think narrowly beating into number 1, my favourite was Good Hunting, which is the one about, it's set in sort of Japan, It's about a man who befriends a Japanese mystical creature whose mother is killed by the main character's father. It charts their relationship over a long period of time as Japan becomes an industrial society and kind of magic bleeds out of the world as the steam engines come. But then, interesting twist, which is Japan then becomes a steampunk society. It's not actually our world, which I thought was quite a good twist in that you get the coming of the railways and things like that, but then there's the coming of the airships. There's quite a good twist as he helps this mystical creature seek revenge against people who's wronged her. I mean, it did have a bit of edgy teenage tits and violence to it, but I did really like the animation was beautiful, and the steampunk world it was set in was beautiful, and it had a good story with some quite visceral moments and some bloody revenge at the end, so I liked that.
Yeah, I enjoyed the aesthetic of this, the way it delicately flipped through genres. I mean, it even got a bit superhero towards the end, which was quite fun. And the way that it managed to actually get the sense of an epic, in that, sort of contrary to what I said about Helping Hand, which, to be honest, I think benefited from focusing very heavily on a couple of people rather than trying to go epic and just feeling generic, whereas this managed to go epic and still feel rooted in this one character and shade in its world through some interesting details. I found the level of tits slightly wearying, and it was at times a bit slow, but it was a fun change of pace compared to the others. That sort of anime aesthetic it's the only one in the collection that really goes for that, and it was quite fun.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a bit of a sucker for steampunk, but I did like that it was a twist that, like, yeah, you think this is a story about how Japan became like an industrial society, but it's actually a story about how Japan became a steampunk society. It told a good story as well within that. So, shall we strive for consensus?
I mean, consensus seems to be that our favourite is Zima Blue, followed by... How high did you have Helping Hand?
I had a number 6.
But you had... Was it 3 robots higher?
3 robots was 4.
Okay, so 3 robots was 4 for both of us, so does that mean it's the communal number 2?
I guess so, yeah.
Behind that, where did you have Ice Age?
Number 7. So we're going to have Helping Hand and Ice Age.
So yeah, in terms of consensus, it's the MFV favourite is Zima Blue, followed by 3 robots, then Helping Hands, then Ice Age.
Yeah.
My sort of honourable mention was Alternate Histories, which I thought was kind of funny, but also wasn't an actual story. It was just more of a funny YouTube video.
Yeah, I put that one quite low down, actually, number 15, because I thought there isn't really a story here. It's just some silly things happening.
Well, there was that and the yogurt one, which were both just kind of closer to gimmicky jokes. There were gimmicky jokes I did laugh at, but still. Anyway, sorry.
I did put the yogurt one at number 8, just behind Ice Age.
Yeah.
So in that, it was funny and it did make me laugh.
So there we go. Possibly the communal number 5 might be the yogurt one.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff to be had in Love, Death and Robots.
Yeah, if you're hovering on the fence about it, there's some ones to start you out with. You can watch them in any order.
Yeah.
So you could start with those. Next up, we'll be asking the question, does Netflix know too much about you? There's been a lot of speculation online that the order of the episodes of Love, Death and Robots is different for gay and straight viewers. They're certainly in a random sequence, and certainly people get different sequences. That's informed by some mysterious magic that Netflix is working. But this comes against the background of people generally being creeped out by the amount of data that big companies like Facebook and Amazon and others hold on its users. And generally, I think we're getting concerned that too much personalization in exchange for too much data is maybe not a trade we want to make with big companies. So, Nick, does Netflix know too much about you?
I mean, based on the online dialogue about this, I got what appears to be the straight man order of Love, Death and Robots. So if Netflix knows too much about me, it appears to be correct. I mean, did you get that as well? With, what is it, Beyond the Aquila Rift first?
Yeah, so I got the straight man order, which is, starts with the one that has quite a lot of straight sex.
Yeah, Aquila Rift, followed by The Secret War, followed by Sonny's Edge.
Yeah, whereas I believe that, according to, again, buzz on the internet, that women, or certainly gay women, seem to get Sonny's Edge first, which is the one that, well, I guess has a kick-ass heroine and also has some same-sex...
some incredibly
some same-sex... yeah.
Some incredibly pro-LGBT content, where a woman uses the possibility of lesbian sex to lure another woman into being beaten to a pulp.
Yeah, it was, like I say, edgy teenage stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, I don't think Netflix has confirmed any of this.
I think Netflix has very specifically said they were just testing different orders and it was not related specifically to the sexuality of the viewer, which it would have no way of knowing, technically.
Yeah. So it is a lot of speculation, but there's definitely at least 2 or 3 orders that I've seen people sharing screenshots of.
It's very possible that it's somehow related to your other viewing more than that. I mean, I've watched 2 full seasons of The Punisher. Maybe that means I'm butch enough to want the straight sex version of the Love, Death and Robots order. Who knows? I mean, I saw the sci-fi author Cameron Hurley say, actually, anthology ordering is an art in itself, and just changing it at random is not really great.
It's like an album. You want to set the kind of the mood at different points and things like that, like how it goes. The mood should come up and go down and things like that.
Like, I mean, to be honest, I didn't think the starting order I got was particularly good. Like, I thought that putting 3 straight episodes of slightly dreary, video gamey fight animation before you got to anything more interesting and different was kind of weird. So, yeah. For the record, Netflix, if you're listening, I thought the order you gave me, it might have appealed more to my penis, but I thought it was shit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is weird. They did start with 3 video gamey ones. They seem to have decided that whatever order you get for Love, Death and Robots, you get the kind of the edgy violent stuff first, just whether you get the straight or the gay edgy violent stuff. No one seems to have an order that starts with when the yogurt took off, then has 3 robots, and then has Ice Age, or alternative histories. No one seems to get the quirky funny order. You either get Beyond the Aquiline Rift, where you can have edgy violence from straight characters, or you can have Sonny's Edge, where you can get edgy violence from gay characters.
I think there might be other orders. I haven't done a vast amount of research. I gather they keep a record of your Bandersnatch decisions as well, although they have denied that they're using this to profile you. So maybe they use whether you decided to kill people earlier or later in Bandersnatch as a register of how much of a bastard you are.
Or how quickly you found the really meta bit when you reveal to the character that he's been controlled by Netflix.
Yeah, I went straight to that. I'm exactly the sort of asshole who would go, chance to be incredibly meta, go.
Yeah.
I'm sure I was reading about a case the other day where Alexa was recording people's private conversations, as it must do, and someone managed to request someone else's private conversations via a GDPR request, which is mildly unsettling.
That's definitely not the point of privacy, which is the P in GDPR.
So yeah, long story short, yes, even outside of whether they butcher the order of Love, Death and Robots, I'm pretty sure that big data does know too much about us at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stories that I've seen, especially things like Facebook, obviously, that harbour enormous amounts of data and are just hungry for more data. I think Facebook have allegedly been trying to get their hands on medical records for years so that they can learn even more about their customers and things like that. And obviously Facebook's tying together data from its platform, Instagram and WhatsApp, and also cookies you and follows you around the internet.
Which is depressing from a privacy standpoint, and, I've heard anecdotes of people who got pregnant, had a miscarriage, and that were then haunted by baby-related adverts for the next month, which probably just makes it worse.
Well, also, as people become aware of remarketing as a thing, which is if you go on a website, add some products to your shopping trolley, and then don't buy them, you'll kind of be followed around the internet by ads for these products you didn't buy, including, amusingly for a friend of mine, a toilet seat. They'd nearly bought a toilet seat on Amazon when they were redoing their bathroom, and for months afterwards, always on the little MPU ads all over the internet, they had pictures of toilet seats.
I personally am haunted on the internet by adverts for people wanting me to print comics with them, so, obviously at some point they've worked out that I want to do that.
Yeah.
On some level I just accept it, because yes, obviously the internet knows this amount about me, but it's a bit unsettling if you actually stop and think about it for 2 seconds. I mean, it gets to the point where I get annoyed for the internet for not knowing enough about me. I get emails from Amazon asking me to review books I bought on Kindle, and it's but I'm reading them on your device. I haven't even opened the sodding book, you must know that. Why don't you know enough about me?
Yeah, there is a weird dichotomy that people are kind of creeped out by the amount of data that companies hold, but they also dislike things like adverts that aren't well targeted and things like that. I mean, for example, there's a setting in your iPhone where you can switch off the data tracking, and it does say, this will not result in you seeing less adverts. This will just result in the adverts being not as well targeted. But I think there is a degree to which people are concerned that they don't necessarily want to make the trade of here's loads of data in exchange for personalized content. Where in the past people were very much yes, make things more specific, learn more about me and meet my needs. And now people are I don't know.
But I don't need adverts to meet my needs. I'm very much of the generation for whom adverts are a thing I basically automatically blank out. When the adverts start on the screen, I look at my phone. When adverts happen on a website, the ones that I manage to get past my ad blocker, I ignore them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I swear at them, but then I ignore them.
There's a discussion amongst digital marketers that the way to make people not ignore adverts is to make the adverts more relevant. Is that the idea that you wouldn't ignore adverts if there's actually something you're interested in? And anecdotally from myself, when I listen to a lot of podcasts, I do, for example, tend not to skip over, say, ads for other podcasts, because I want to think like, oh, wait, I might be interested in listening to this. And I have generally discovered podcasts that I quite like through adverts for other podcasts. But I always skip over the ridiculous ads for MeUndies or the home security one, or endless mattresses.
Or drugs, weirdly. I know this is very much probably an American thing, but I find it very, very strange when podcast hosts, often the actual hosts, start talking about drug supplement companies. It's like, you can sign up for these drug supplements now. We've been taking them and it's great. What?
All right, I don't get any of those.
I feel vaguely bad naming names for no discernible reason. Maybe just because we're a podcast and it feels like I'm somehow breaching some professional code to throw shade at other podcasts. But yeah, I do find podcast hosts doing personalised ads for drug supplements a bit weird.
Maybe we're just jealous because no one's paying us to advertise drug supplements on our podcast.
No, and you know what, for now I'll try and pretend that's a line I draw. I mean, I'm not sure that happens in Britain that much anyway. This was an American podcast, but still, let's pretend we wouldn't do that even for money.
No. There is, I think, a degree to which people are not so happy about the amount that companies know about people. Like, for example, apparently amongst American teenagers, flip phones are becoming increasingly popular because flip phone tracks very little information about you because it doesn't have the sophistication of like an iPhone. And there's definitely some people finding, that having this kind of supercomputer in your pocket is kind of cool, other than the fact it's spying on you all the time.
So flip phones as in like dumb phones, as in non-smartphones?
Yeah, like the phones they had in the original series of 24.
Sure, well, there must be a market there for someone for making like dumb phones that look cool.
Yeah.
Or maybe the argument here is the nostalgia. Maybe it's that, they look old and clunky and therefore they're cool.
There's probably a nostalgia element to it. I did actually once see on the internet an ad for a dumb phone, which was like, it was a phone that just had a number pad on it and a small screen, and it texted and could make calls. And people were like, oh, that's quite interesting. And it was quite stylishly designed. And then I saw it was £250. And I thought, that's a lot of money for something that the whole point of it is that it does very little.
Well, I'm sure if I wanted to buy a new player to play my VHS tapes on, it would be much the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, you can spiral up from this to how much does Facebook know about me, and is it using it to rig elections and destroy the fabric of society?
Yeah, obviously that is the concern that people have gamed some of these systems. For example, Facebook obviously is very good at spreading far-right and white nationalist propaganda through its systems. Obviously, WhatsApp has been implemented in spreading of fake news and far-right propaganda in the Brazilian election recently. Lots of people have pointed out that it's terrifyingly easy to find white nationalist stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, the watch next algorithm on YouTube, apparently, if you go to basically a random video on YouTube, if you want to play a fun game, then keep clicking on the watch next videos and see how long before it puts you on someone talking about Jordan Peterson or why Captain Marvel is a subversive plot by the feminists.
Yeah, exactly. It does happen terrifyingly quickly on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube, I think, have even possibly announced they are looking at their algorithm and
we are worried our algorithm might be a Nazi. We are.
Yeah.
We're having a chat to it. See if we can determine any far-right beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see someone actually quoting, I think it might have been one of the founders of Twitter, saying that the problem with a lot of internet algorithms is that the one thing everyone will look at is a car crash, and when you've got an algorithm registering what's popular for people to look at, it'll just show you more and more car crashes.
Yeah.
As things that are awful or in some way disastrous or evocative or make you go, what? And it just gets more and more ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then, to bring it back to our actual topic, I guess, the internet then quickly learns that you're someone who likes to stare at car wrecks.
Yeah. And then feeds you more of it. Because that's the kind of the personalization system that's behind a lot of this stuff. And obviously, whatever gets interaction, you get more of. The system is designed to promote stuff that gets more interacted. So whatever algorithm you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whatever, and gets more interaction. And it doesn't seem to differentiate between positive or negative interaction. So stuff that gets people angry gets shared a lot because it's a kind of a fairly universal emotion, which is probably what's helped to contribute to the internet is just now people screaming and rage at each other because that's what the algorithm likes to promote, things that get angry reactions.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if that's related to whether Netflix knows too much about me. I mean, Netflix knowing too much about me just tends to lead to people seeing too many generic-looking sci-fi fantasy shows, I think.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's a symptom.
Did you have Love, Death and Robots promoted to you as because when you log into Netflix, either on the phone or the desktop, there's the banner space at the top is kind of their most prime bit of real estate where they usually put something there trying to push quite heavily to you. Because that's how I find out about Love, Death and Robots. I just logged in and it was right there at the top saying, like, this is something you might like.
It wasn't, actually. I think Netflix has been pushing The Order at me quite hard. It was Umbrella Academy until I gave in to them and watched Umbrella Academy. But, you know, as someone who's watched, like, every single one of those Marvel Netflix shows, I can't deny that Umbrella Academy is pretty obviously within my interest spectrum, so I can't really blame them for recommending it to me, to be honest.
Yeah, whereas I did have it at the top. But I think because I watch quite a lot of science fiction on Netflix, probably more science fiction than comic adaptations. Though I did have Umbrella Academy pushed to me a lot and I am now watching it. But yeah, I think after watching like The Expanse and also watching Night Flyers, and obviously they thought very much like Love, Death and Robots is in the sort of the quadrant of things you are likely to like.
I mean, yeah, we can't really argue the usefulness of these recommendations, I suppose, in all the cases we've just mentioned. Netflix has recommended us things and we have indeed watched them and they have been broadly in the genre we like.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the problem, really. These things are useful on a micro scale, but as they scale up and up and up and so on, and the implications become faintly terrifying.
I think there's a degree to which this is useful. I mean, it's not the biggest leap in the world that basically like this person watches The Expanse and watches Night Flyers, you know, watches various other science fiction films. This person will probably like some more science fiction. I mean, that's kind of useful because that's how I found out about the show and that's how we got to do this sequence. But I think it's just when it kind of gets to kind of terrifying things like, I don't know, you're the sort of person who thinks we could easily turn you against democracy, so here's some content that will do that.
So basically, does Netflix know too much about you? To be honest, probably yes, because it probably doesn't need to save every response I gave to Bandersnatch to tell me you might like this superhero show based on your viewing of other superhero shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the side tale is does it know too much about you because that data is a more valuable commodity than the actual shows. But pretty much all you've got to reassure you there is that Netflix isn't Facebook, so hopefully might not sell your data.
No. Although I guess they are apparently going to start running ads or have like a free version that's ad supported, so I guess all that data is going to be funneled towards selling ads on Netflix.
Yay.
Although I don't know the fact that you killed and cut up the dad in Bandersnatch. I don't really know how they can use that information for personalising your ads.
I think that probably means I'm going straight to the alt-right section of Netflix, wherever that is.
Oh, that's terrifying.
There's nothing I want more than to binge a 13-hour, slow-paced alt-right TV show. I'm joking, by the way. Please don't come to my house, FBI.
Tune in next time where we'll be reviewing other things found at the top of the Netflix app.
Okay, and that was Moderate Fantasy Violence for this fortnight. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, why not go to moderatefantasyviolence.com where you can find more episodes of the same, plus a few bonus clips, a few bonus essays. And if you enjoy all of that cumulatively, then why not go to iTunes and or your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice 5-star review. Thank you.
You can also find us on Twitter, where we are at MFV Podcast, and you can find us on Facebook by searching for Moderate Fantasy Violence, and our lovely purple logo will pop up. You can also find me on Twitter, where I am at Alistair J.R. Ball, and you can find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com.
And I'm on Twitter as @NickMB, or you can find more about me at nickbryan.com, including stuff about my crime novels or my lovely comics, which are now out to order either as print or on the internet in various forms. Thank you. And join us again in 2 weeks, when this time, we swear to God, we actually are going to review Us, the new movie by Jordan Peele. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It might have appealed more to my penis, but I thought it was shit.
Okay. There's an episode title there.
I try not to put swear words in the title, as Netflix does. Netflix? iTunes, the other organisation that definitely knows too much about me, does censor them.